Hey team, Master Schiele here. Today I want to talk about traditions of the dojang. Let's get started. So in our art, Taekwondo, we call it a dojang. In your style of martial arts, you might call it a dojo, you might call it a martial arts studio. Regardless of what you call it, traditions are very important because they're passed down from generation to generation to keep the art alive. So with that, let's get started with this video. Now, the first thing that when you walk into the dojang, you are going to do a bow. Why do we bow? Well, there's really two reasons, and I teach them depending on what age group I'm talking to. If I'm talking to the kids, I'll say, real easy, you are bowing to show respect to the place that you're training. Super, super simple, right? And that's exactly what we're doing. We're bowing to show respect. Now, if I'm talking to adults, what I like to do is I like to elaborate on that a little bit as well. So what we're doing is we pretend that our head is a cup. And as we bow, we take that bow and whatever we have throughout the day, stress from our job, stress from family, whatever's going on in the world, we are emptying that cup. So when we're out on the floor, we're there to do one thing, to train. That's it. Because we don't want things to interrupt that training. If you bring things out on the mats, you're not going to get the full benefit of the class. So we almost want the class to be therapeutic. We want it to be something for you. When you're there, that's all you're there to do is train. Nothing else. Nothing else should be on your mind. So that bow is symbolic to empty your cup. Now, the next tradition that we do is after you bow, you get out on the floor. You always want to make sure you do a little bit of a light stretch, light warm up for yourself. That's important just to make sure that whatever injuries, anything that you have, you are preparing for the class. Because you don't know how that class is going to go. You don't know if it's going to be a good deep stretch class. You don't know if it's going to be a very aggressive class. So if you have something that you need to work on, that's your time to do that, right? Now, when we get the lineup should happen quickly and fast, okay? Now, when they're kids, we help them line up. With the older and the adults, and anyone a little bit older or higher in the ranks, we expect them to be able to line up by themselves. And how do you line up? The highest rank is in the front and the lowest rank is in the back. Very, very simple. The reason that you do that is really twofold. There's a little tradition with that. I'm not going to talk about it in this video. We'll talk about it in the next video. But one tradition is you need to be able to see the higher ranks. You need to see how it's performed. If I have black belts in my front rows, well, the color belts that are behind, they're going to be able to see how a technique looks, right? So the farther back you are, that shows just the dedication of your ranks. So the closer you are to the instructor, that's where the highest ranks go. So always highest to lowest. Now, after the class starts, it's very important to make sure that we empty the cup, we're there to focus. We really want to focus on the instructor and what's happening at all times right there. Now, that really comes to something that's important as well, and it's not being late for class. You know, when you're late for class, it shows the class that you're just not completely ready for it, right? Now, I always appreciate my students when they come to class regardless. You know, if it's whether you're going to be late or not show up at all, I'd rather you be late, okay? But it's important that if you're always late, maybe 1 minute, 2 minutes, if you just leave a little bit earlier, chances are you're not going to be late anymore, and you'll really be ready to get out there. So with that, a very important tradition is never to be late for your class. I actually know schools, I don't do it, but I know schools that will literally lock the door once the class starts. And if you miss that opportunity to train, that's it. And that's how old school they are. Again, I don't do that, but I do know schools that do, all right? So never be late for class. Next part of the tradition is making sure that, and this kind of goes with the emptying the cup, is words of lesser value words. Let's use that. Lesser value words we never want to use on the floor. Words that show weakness, I can't do this, I don't want to do this, whatever it is, we don't use those. Swearing is another one. We don't swear on the mats because, again, we want to make this a very protected space for our training, right? And I use swearing as a low value word. So swearing is never a good thing to do, okay? And that is one of our traditions of our school. So never using low value words, swearing, anything like that. Never is going to be acceptable, all right? Let's move on. So we talked about the bow. We talked about how you line up. We talked about low value words. The next thing is when you're out on the mats, You want to be willing to learn, okay? There is a tradition as we take the class that when an instructor speaks to you, you want to acknowledge that they gave that time to talk to you. So very simply, when an instructor gives you some things that you can work on, especially individually, maybe you're training, you're working on something, and the instructor comes up to you, it's important to recognize that the instructor sees something in you, they're trying to correct that. So it's very simple, we just bow and we thank them. Really, really easy. Again, that goes with the tradition and the culture of what happens in the class. So when an instructor helps you with something, show that bow, show that you appreciate that the instruction, and then just get right back to what you were doing. Very, very important thing. Also, it's also to understand that we have to be there willing to learn, okay? If you're out on the floor, you're there to learn, you're there to train. We can't be empty-minded. We can't have, it's my way, I used to do it this way at my old school. And no. When you're there, be willing to learn. You know what I always say? If you have, maybe I have a lot of students in my school that had a black belt in another art, and they come in here. And I gotta say, all my students that I've ever done that are very humble. But they're humble because they say, hey, I'm just adding to my arsenal. I'm just adding to more knowledge. I might have done something else in my other school a certain way, but now I do it this way. And now you just have more weapons. You have more things in the arsenal. So look at it that way. Have the willingness to learn, okay? Last thing that I wanna talk about, and this is gonna be kind of to wrap up our video. You need to treat the dojang as a very important place, okay? Now, if we really just break it down, it's a few walls, it's some mirrors, it's some mats, and that's the dojang. It's really not too elaborate, right? It's supposed to be simple, but here's the truth. What you hold it and the value you put behind it is everything. It's everything because this is your place. So you have to use those traditions to keep the art alive and to make it a very important place for you. So that's why I say, we don't swear on the mats. We don't use low value words. We always bow when leaving or exiting or leaving the dojang. We always make sure that we're showing the instructor appreciation because that keeps the art alive. That's why we come to the dojang. I have another cool video too of making your own home dojang, and I suggest everything I talk in this video that you do the same at your home dojang as well, because that is what it's all about. It's kind of taking everything and putting it together, right? Making sure that you have value where you train. That's what that is. And you know what? If you treat it as a sacred place to train, you'll always have that, and you'll always look at it as a very special place for you, all right? With that, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please check out my other ones. Please subscribe, hit that like button, and I will see you in our next one. Take care.